I am Tara Hayes, 28, and literally last weekend, my rep as the family glue? Yeah, it totally backfired. The piece I'd been holding together, the one I worked my butt off to keep solid, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown right there in the middle of Claire's post-breakdown welcome dinner. My father, a certain someone we all know, straight up demanded I be supportive like always, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You just ruined us," Claire shrieked, mascara halfway down her cheeks, with everyone staring like I had thrown a chair, not a boundary. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. So drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost laughable. You wouldn't believe what my dad will do once he realizes I don't need him anymore. The crash wasn't even my fault. That SUV blew through the red light like it was aiming for me. I remember the metal screaming before the world went silent. When I came to, I was upside down, coughing blood into a deflated airbag. One leg broken, 3 ribs cracked, a punctured lung, and not a single family member at the hospital until day 2. Day 2. But when they finally showed, Dad walked in, Claire behind him in a cashmere hoodie, eyes red like she'd been sobbing all week. My chest tightened. Maybe they cared after all. But no. My father's first words? Claire was absolutely distraught. She had to cancel her art retreat. I blinked, tubes in my nose, pain radiating with every breath, and he was worried about her canceled weekend in Sedona? I glanced at her, not a word to me, just a half-hearted pat on my arm, like she didn't know where to place her guilt, or maybe she didn't have any. And here's what hit me in that moment, like the second impact of the crash. This wasn't a one-time thing, this was the pattern. My life-threatening accident had become Claire's emotional inconvenience, just like my college graduation had been overshadowed by Claire's breakup, just like the time I saved Mom from losing the house during probate, and they thanked Claire for keeping us calm. I've been carrying this family on my spine since I was 15, and they were still asking me to carry more, on a stretcher no less. I didn't say much that day, just nodded through their performative concern and listened to Claire whine about jet lag, but inside a crack had formed, something tectonic, and for the first time I didn't feel guilty about it. That night, alone in my hospital room, I stared at the ceiling tiles and said it out loud. They don't love me. They just use me. My voice shook, but it was real. My truth, finally spoken. And once you name it, you can't unsee it. You can't crawl back. So, I didn't. It didn't start with the crash, obviously. That was just the final cut. The kind that slices clean through bone. But the blade had been dull and grinding for years. Decades, even. My whole life. I remember being 7, bringing home a crayon drawing of a dinosaur family for our school's art contest. I worked on it for days, layers of green and blue, little labels under each stegosaurus, Mommy, Daddy, Tara, and then, tiny in the corner, Claire. The teacher gave me a gold sticker and said, "This shows real heart." I showed it to my dad, beaming. He didn't even look up from his paper. "Did Claire draw one too?" he asked. I said no. He nodded. "Well, maybe next year she'll be ready." Claire was 5. I was invisible at 7. That's how it always was. I was the capable one, which in our family was code for, "We'll ignore you because we know you'll survive." Claire, on the other hand, was a flower made of sugar and porcelain, never asked to lift a finger, always on the verge of collapse. The golden child. The fragile one. The girl whose tears could redirect a whole family's attention, like floodlights on a darkened stage. When I got accepted into UCLA, I paid for most of it with scholarships and part-time jobs. I flew home for Christmas break my sophomore year with a 3.9 GPA and 2 internships lined up. I walked into the house to find balloons, cake, and confetti. It was Claire's party. She'd passed her driving test. On the 3rd try. That's when I stopped expecting anything. No more waiting for praise or even acknowledgement. I just leaned into the role they'd quietly carved out for me. The steady one. The dependable one. The scapegoat when things went south and the cleanup crew when they shattered something. When Mom died, I was 21. I stayed behind while everyone else fell apart. I handled the arrangements. I read the eulogy. Claire refused to speak at the service because she said grief made her bloated. Dad couldn't even sign the forms. I did it all. And still. Still, Claire was the one people patted on the shoulder, whispering, "Poor thing, she was so close to her mom." I used to think I didn't need the recognition, that I was above it, that I could earn love through usefulness, but you can't build self-worth on a currency no one's willing to pay. You know what's wild? I didn't even notice how much I was disappearing until I started keeping score. Not on purpose. Just one night, I started writing it all down. The little dismissals. The things I did without thanks. The times they cheered Claire for breathing and scolded me for speaking up. Page after page. I filled an entire journal. And reading it back felt like reading about someone else. Some ghost who floated through life unnoticed, unloved, but still hopeful enough to stay. I was done being that ghost. The turning point came quietly. No grand epiphany, no dramatic storm out. Just a late night 2 years ago alone in my apartment after another family phone call where Claire cried over a breakup, and Dad suggested I maybe check in on her more. Not once did he ask how I was. I'd just gotten out of urgent care that morning with stress-induced gastritis. But I smiled through the call, offered to send her groceries, and hung up. And then I stared at my reflection in the black screen of my laptop and whispered, "What if I built something for me?" I'd always been good at listening, at untangling people's messes, trauma, emotion, guilt. I wasn't a therapist, but I was the friend who people confided in at 2 a.m., the one coworkers vented to in the break room, and I knew pain intimately, my own and everyone else's. Somewhere along the way I'd turned survival into a skill set. So I started small. Weekends and evenings, I created a digital resource space, anonymous, quiet, and real, for people navigating toxic family dynamics. I called it Rooted Again. I shared stories, tools, scripts for setting boundaries. I wasn't a professional yet, but I was honest, and apparently, honesty was what people were starving for. The first 100 subscribers trickled in like drips through a leak. Then a flood. Emails came. I thought it was just me. This saved my life. You put into words what I've felt for years. It's snowballed. I partnered with a trauma-informed therapist to validate our content. A social worker reached out, asking to use our modules for her support group. By month 6, we had a paid membership platform and corporate interest from a mental wellness startup. And through it all, I told no one. Not Claire, who would have turned it into her next blog post about sibling wounds. Not Dad, who would have dismissed it as emotional freelancing. Not even my coworkers, who only knew me as Quiet Tara from HR. This was mine. I reinvested every cent, hired a small team, built out licensing content, got legal help, trademarked the name. I was terrified every step of the way, but also, for the first time, I wasn't being drained by someone else's fire. I was tending my own. I remember sitting on the floor one night, surrounded by drafts and notes and 2 empty mugs of chamomile tea, and thinking, if they found out, they'd probably ask what Claire did to inspire me. And instead of crying like I usually did, I laughed, out loud, alone. That's when I knew something had changed. Not just outside, inside. I wasn't just building a platform, I was building an exit. A lifeboat, a new name. A life where I didn't have to prove my value to people who never really saw me. And now, 2 years later, that hidden little side project was about to be valued at just under $8 million in a merger that would give me total creative control. The contracts were ready. The lawyers were ready. All I had to do was sign. But first, there was one last dinner I had to get through. The text came while I was reviewing the final draft of the contract. One hand on my trackpad, the other clutching a lukewarm mug of ginger tea, my phone lit up. Family dinner, Friday, 7 p.m. Home. No greeting, no question mark, just a command, like always. I stared at it for a long time, not even from Dad. Claire had sent it. No emoji, just the quiet arrogance of assumption. The same assumption that I'd drop everything, show up on cue, smile, nod, and listen while Claire cried about something and Dad made passive remarks about how some people don't prioritize family anymore. I almost didn't go. I almost hit delete and moved on with my night. I was so close. But something in me, call it spite, call it closure, wanted to be there. Not for them. For me. One last time, one last round in the ring before I stepped out of it for good. Besides, if all went as planned, by the time dessert hit the table, I'd be a multimillionaire. Not that I'd say anything, not yet. So I replied, okay, see you then. That week dragged, between final revisions, lawyer calls, and onboarding prep for the new team. I barely slept. But it wasn't work that kept me up. It was the noise in my head, the memories that came back uninvited. Claire's birthday trip to Cabo, where I canceled a conference to babysit her after she drank too much. The Thanksgiving Dad asked me to wash the dishes instead of joining the family photo because someone's got to be helpful. All those dinners where I kept the peace like it was my rent to stay in the fam. But this dinner felt different, like the end of a long performance where the actor finally walks off stage without applause. Friday came. I dressed deliberately, not flashy but not small either. A deep green blouse, fitted slacks, gold earrings, the kind of outfit that says I belong in rooms you'll never be invited into. Driving up to the old house felt like entering a time capsule. Same peeling paint on the porch rail. Same dent in the mailbox from when Claire hid it backing out in high school. She never got in trouble for that. I parked, took a breath, and stepped into my past. Claire answered the door, all dewy makeup and faux concern. "Tara," she said like my name tasted odd in her mouth. "You made it." "Of course," I said, stepping past her. "Wouldn't miss it." The dining room was already set. Dad sat at the head of the table, newspaper folded beside his plate like always. He glanced up, nodded, and said, "Nice of you to show up." "Nice of you to notice," I replied, taking my seat. No one laughed. As the roast chicken made its rounds and the wine was poured, small talk floated around like steam off stale coffee. Claire talked about her healing journey, her recent panic attack while meditating, and how she was finally feeling aligned again. Dad clucked approval. And me? I just smiled and nodded. Fork in hand, back straight, counting down the hours until my signature would hit that contract. The first jab came while we were passing the green beans. "So," Claire said, delicately scooping a spoonful onto her plate, "how's your little website thing going? Still doing that, or?" I didn't flinch. Still doing that. Dad didn't look up from cutting his meat. "I thought that was more of a hobby. People really pay for those things now?" "It's more than a hobby," I said calmly. "It's a company." Claire blinked, then laughed, just once, sharp. "A company? Like with employees?" I smiled. "Yes, Claire, like with employees." They shared a glance across the table, that silent exchange they've perfected my entire life. The "can you believe her" look. I've seen it during report cards, during job interviews, even after Mom's funeral. "Well," Dad said finally, taking a sip of wine, "as long as it doesn't get in the way of something real." Something real. Like Claire's essential oil podcast, apparently. Or her failed Etsy shop, or her month-long art residency in Sedona where she produced exactly one canvas, an abstract swirl titled Tension. But I didn't snap. Not this time. I just nodded slowly and asked, "And how's your portfolio holding up, Dad? Still letting that advisor lose money for you?" That one landed. His fork paused midair. Claire tried to change the subject. "I've actually been really drained lately. Like, energetically, my therapist says I'm probably absorbing other people's stress." "Must be exhausting," I murmured, "being so porous." She blinked again, unsure whether that was a compliment or not. Before she could decide, Dad leaned forward. "Listen," he said, setting down his fork. "The truth is, Tara, you've always been independent. You don't need the kind of support Claire does. And it's not that we don't value what you do." "Yes, it is," I cut in. His face hardened. "Excuse me? You said it yourself." "Something real. That's what you think. That's what you've always thought. When I was working 3 jobs in college? Not real. When I paid for my own therapy after Mom died because you said we needed to be strong? Not real. When I helped you settle the estate while Claire went on a healing retreat? Not real." Claire's voice wobbled. "Why are you bringing all this up now?" "Because," I said, folding my napkin in my lap, "I'm tired of pretending this is normal." Dad sighed, long and theatrical. "You always were the difficult one." "Funny," I said, "I thought I was the reliable one." Claire stood abruptly. "Can we not do this tonight? I've had a really emotional week." And there it was, the reset button, the empathy siphon. Every conversation was a funnel toward her. Dad reached over, put a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, you don't need to take this in." He turned to me. "I think you should leave." The words hit like ice water, even though I saw them coming, but I didn't cry, didn't plead, I just nodded. "Okay." I stood slowly, collected my bag, walked to the door, and just before I opened it, I said without turning around, "You'll regret this." I stood outside on the porch for a long moment, my hand still resting on the doorknob. The air was thick and sticky, one of those early summer nights where the humidity clings to your skin like guilt. Behind the door I could still hear the faint scrape of utensils, the clink of a wine glass, someone clearing their throat. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been erased. I didn't cry. Not this time. I walked to my car slowly, deliberately. Got in, closed the door, sat with my hands on the wheel. My phone buzzed in my purse. A single text. From Claire. You always make everything about you. I didn't reply. I just let the screen go dark again. It had happened. The thing I used to fear like death, the unspoken threat they dangled over me for years, finally came to life. You're not one of us anymore. It wasn't even a dramatic explosive fight. It was colder than that. Calculated. A sentence delivered like a verdict. I think you should leave. And beneath that, the real message. You're no longer useful. For years, I'd bet myself backward into every shape they needed. The helper, the fixer, the silent one, the emotional sponge. And now that I'd stopped contorting for their comfort, I was discarded. I drove aimlessly for a while. Down side streets, past old landmarks I used to pretend were home. The frozen yogurt place where Claire cried after her first boyfriend dumped her. The park where I once stayed up all night finishing a research paper because the house was too loud to concentrate. Every memory felt like it was being projected onto a screen from someone else's life. Eventually I ended up at the Overlook, the place Mom used to take us before things got complicated, where the city stretched out below, glittering, indifferent, alive. I parked and just sat there, breathing, watching. That's when the weight hit me. It wasn't sadness, it was clarity. There would be no apology coming, no phone call, no moment of remorse. They had made their choice, Claire had made hers, and for the first time in my life, I had the power to make mine. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app, typed, terminate emergency contact, call lawyer, remove Claire from healthcare proxy, cancel family access to apartment building, new phone plan, lock down credit lines, create boundary letter, send only if necessary. I stared at that list, then added one more line, let them go, fully. My phone buzzed again, this time from my lawyer. Kendra, congrats, final merger docs came in. I'll need your signature tonight if you want to lock tomorrow morning's wire. I blinked. That was today? I texted back. I'll sign in 30. Let's do it. Because I was done playing the quiet daughter, the dependable girl, the scapegoat. They'd cut me off? Perfect. They'd just freed me. Back at my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I let the city glow filter through my living room windows as I opened my laptop and pulled up the final merger documents. The cursor blinked in the signature field like it had been waiting for me all along. My heart thudded once, hard, like it wanted to be sure I was really doing this. $7,420,000. Not a windfall. A valuation, a recognition of every silent hour I'd poured into Rooted again. Every night I didn't sleep, every email I answered, every tear I turned into a tool for someone else's healing. I clicked, signed, sent. And that was it. No applause. No champagne pop, just the quiet, irreversible click of liberation. I set the laptop aside, let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, and stood. And then my phone rang. I stared at the name, Claire. Of course, I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Hey, I said flatly. Her voice came through tight, frantic. Are you okay? I blinked. Since when do you ask me that? She ignored the jab. I just saw something weird. Someone posted about you on LinkedIn. That business thing you do. Did you sell it or something? I could hear it in her voice, the panic beneath the performative concern. She wasn't calling because she cared. She was calling because she was losing access. To me, to the resource, to the reliable sister she could always depend on. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the window, looked out over the city. I didn't sell it, I said. I merged it. I retained ownership, creative control. A long pause. How much? I let the silence stretch until it was almost cruel. Then, enough. Claire's breath hitched. I imagined her in her apartment, eyes wide, jaw slack, the gears turning. Not just jealousy, not even greed, but confusion, because for the first time, she was seeing me as someone she couldn't control. You didn't tell us, she said quietly. You mean I didn't give you a chance to steal it, criticize it, make it about you? Tara, that's not fair. No, What's not fair is being in a car crash and hearing my father worry more about your canceled spa trip than the fact I couldn't walk for 3 weeks. She went silent. I didn't fill the space. You really did all this behind our backs? She finally whispered. Not behind, I said. Away from. A soft beep interrupted us. Another call coming in. My lawyer. I clicked over without saying goodbye. Kendra's voice was warm. You're officially merged. Wires scheduled. Welcome to the next chapter, Tara. I closed my eyes and smiled. Thanks, I said. I'm ready. And this time, I meant it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, but because I felt awake in a way I hadn't in years. Every nerve in my body buzzed with something that felt dangerously close to peace. Or maybe it was clarity, or power. I couldn't tell yet, but the next morning I knew exactly what I was going to do. I got dressed slowly. A clean white blouse, slate gray slacks, a blazer the color of steel. No jewelry, no frills, just sharp lines and quiet intention. I pulled my hair back, made a cup of tea, and watched the sun rise through the window as I composed the message in my head. Then I got in my car and drove to their house. The house looked the same, like it always did. Stuck in time, stuck in denial. Claire's little blue Prius sat in the driveway next to Dad's sedan, neat as ever. I parked across the street, got out, walked up the path like someone walking into their own funeral, but this time I was the one holding the eulogy. Claire opened the door, already mid-sentence. Tara, I just think if we could all... I'm not here to negotiate, I said. Dad stood behind her, arms crossed, that classic disappointed look on his face like he was just waiting for me to say something selfish so he could be proud of his disapproval. You didn't have to storm out, he said. We were trying to have a calm conversation. You disowned me, I said. That was the conversation. I stepped inside, walked straight to the dining room where last night's ghost still lingered. Plates stacked, napkins half-folded, the remnants of contempt. I turned to face them both. I'm here to return the favor, I said. From this point on, I'm disowning you. Claire's mouth fell open. Dad blinked. Excuse me? You want to cut ties? Great, I've already removed you both from every emergency contact form, healthcare proxy, and legal document. My lawyer is sending you the termination notices this week. There will be no inheritance expectations, no shared property, no guardianship requests. We are not family, not anymore. You can't just... Claire started, but I cut her off. I can, and I did. And before you ask, no, you don't get to cry and make this about your pain. Not this time. I spent 28 years giving you both more than you ever gave me. I carried your emotions, your chaos, your complete inability to see me as anything more than your emotional ATM. You want someone to hold your hand while you spiral? Call each other. Claire looked stricken. Dad's jaw twitched. I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 envelopes. I set them gently on the table. These are courtesy copies, I said. Formal letters severing all ties, legal language, but I underlined the important part for you, no further obligation. That includes birthdays, hospital visits, weddings. Don't call, don't write, don't ask. Claire's eyes welled with tears. This is cruel. No, I said softly, what you've done all my life, that was cruel. I turned, walked out, didn't look back, didn't flinch when the door slammed behind me. The air outside hit different, lighter, quieter, like something had unlatched inside me the moment I walked away. I didn't go home. I drove straight to Eastwood Cafe, where the people who actually showed up for me were already waiting. My best friend Naomi had texted me the night before after sensing something in my voice on our usual check-in call. She didn't ask questions, just said, brunch, tomorrow, no excuses. When I walked in, Naomi stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her mimosa. There she is, she said, pulling me into a hug that didn't ask anything of me, didn't need anything back. Just warmth, just home. Tell me you didn't do it, she whispered. Tell me you finally did it. I nodded, and she whooped loud enough for 2 nearby tables to glance over. At the booth sat Mateo, our tech lead, and Asha, our content manager. The 2 people who'd helped me build Rooted again from scattered notes and trauma scars into a living, breathing company. They had already ordered food. Naomi handed me a latte with a tiny heart in the foam. You're late, Mateo said, smirking. I had to send a letter, I said, sliding in. They didn't need me to explain. They already knew. Asha leaned in, eyes bright. We signed? I nodded. They cheered, quietly out of respect for the elderly couple next to us, But I felt the celebration in every high five, every smile, every crinkle-eyed look that said, "You did it, you're safe now." Naomi pushed a box across the table, opened it. Inside, a tiny crystal trophy, etched in gold, Tara Hayes, CEO, Survivor, Badass. My throat tightened. Not from pain, but from something I hadn't felt in years, being seen. They didn't congratulate me for being the strong one, they didn't ask for anything, they just celebrated me. No tears, no manipulation, just joy. I let myself sink into it. For once I didn't shrink or apologize or deflect. I smiled, took a bite of pancakes, let them toast me with orange juice and coffee, and when Naomi raised her glass and said, "To chosen family," I didn't flinch at the word. Because this was family. Not bound by blood or guilt, but by care. By presence. By the quiet kind of loyalty that shows up without being asked and stays without conditions. I watched Mateo and Asha debate whether we should move to a bigger office. I listened as Naomi pulled out her notebook to brainstorm community grant ideas, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I was in it. Part of something. Leading it, even. Not for their approval. Not for survival. For me. And somewhere between the syrup and the third refill of coffee I realized I didn't need to be anyone's daughter or sister to be whole. I was already complete. That night, I changed everything. Not just the locks. The rules. I opened a new notes folder on my phone and titled it The Fortress. Inside, I wrote 10 commandments for myself. 10 boundaries I wouldn't bend, not even for a single tear or a half-hearted apology. If they gaslight you, leave. If they only call when they need something, don't answer. If they insult your success, subtract them from it. If you feel smaller around them, that's the clue. If they mock your healing, they're not part of it. Protect your peace like it's currency. Choose truth over tradition. Silence is an answer. Guilt is not a debt you owe. You're allowed to start over, even if they don't approve. It felt silly at first, typing them out, but then I printed them. Taped them to the inside of my closet. Framed them on my desk, because a boundary isn't real until you defend it. The next day, the texts started rolling in. First Claire, "Can we talk? Just us?" Then a follow-up, "Dad says he didn't mean it that way, we were just overwhelmed." I didn't reply. 3 hours later, "So you're just gonna cut us off like we're strangers?" Yes, that was the answer. I blocked the numbers, changed my phone plan, just like I said I would. Updated my emergency contacts, Naomi first, then Mateo. Removed my family name from my business paperwork. It wasn't a punishment, it was protection. Like closing a window before the storm can undo everything you built. There was grief, yes, but it wasn't the kind I expected. It wasn't about missing them. It was about mourning the version of me that kept waiting for them to change. I donated the birthday cards I'd kept in a shoebox, the ones that said, "Love, Dad," but never included anything specific about me. I threw out the crayon drawings I used to think proved I belonged. I even archived old voicemails, Claire crying, Dad lecturing, into a folder labeled, "No Longer Mine." And then I did something radical. I rested. I made tea. I took a long bath. I read a book without checking my phone every 5 minutes. No tension in my shoulders. No waiting for the next guilt trip. Just stillness. No one was watching me anymore. No one was judging me for how I healed. The silence wasn't lonely, it was sacred. That weekend Naomi texted me, "How's freedom?" And I replied, "Heavier than I thought, but it's mine." Because the truth is it wasn't about revenge, it wasn't even about them. It was about building a life where I no longer had to prove I deserved one. A week after the merger went public, I made an announcement of my own. No press release, no interviews. Just a simple post on Rooted Again's homepage, written in my voice, signed with my name. For every woman who carried the emotional weight of a family and was still told she wasn't enough, this is for you. Starting this fall, we're launching the Tara Hayes Legacy Fund. A grant for young women building their future with no safety net, no backup plan, and no one cheering from the sidelines. Because I know what it's like to succeed in silence, and I know how much louder healing can be when someone finally says, "I see you. Let this be that voice." I sat back after hitting publish and let the moment wash over me. This wasn't about reclaiming my name out of pride, it was about reclaiming what that name meant. I'd grown up believing the Hayes family name meant burden, resentment, unseen labor, and endless apology. But now? Now it meant choice. It meant ownership. It meant rebuilding. Not the version of the family I thought I needed, but the legacy I was choosing to leave behind. I poured resources into the fund: legal aid for girls escaping toxic households, seed grants for passion projects, scholarships for trauma-informed education. We partnered with shelters, campus groups, and mental health clinics. And every application we received told a different version of the same story. They didn't believe in me, but I kept going. I had to parent my own parents. I thought love meant sacrifice. I read every single one, and I saw myself in all of them. One morning, I opened a handwritten thank you note from our first grantee, RE 19, working 3 jobs to get her associates in social work. She wrote, "I didn't know anyone else had a family like mine until I found your site. I didn't know I could leave. You helped me leave." I held that letter for a long time, traced the words with my thumb. That was it. That was the real inheritance, not some dusty trust fund or validation from people who had only ever wanted my obedience. This ripple of impact was the family legacy I was writing. One grant, one story, one brave, broken, rebuilding woman at a time. It didn't matter that Dad would never acknowledge it, that Claire would roll her eyes if she ever saw the site. What mattered was that it wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine, the name, the future. The light at the end of a tunnel I had clawed through with nothing but grit and silence, and a hope I didn't even know I was still carrying. I was no longer the daughter trying to earn love. I was the woman giving it back, to the one still in the dark. It hit me on a Tuesday. Not during some grand event or milestone, not after signing another deal or receiving praise, just while I was folding laundry, a quiet breeze drifting in through the open window, the smell of jasmine tea still lingering in the kitchen. I paused, holding a towel against my chest, and realized I felt peaceful. Not adrenaline, not relief, not the tense, bracing for impact kind of calm that comes before the next emotional blow. Actual peace. The kind that hums beneath your skin and says, "You're safe now." You're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. There is no shoe. I sat down on the floor right there among warm cotton and mismatched socks and just breathed. And I thought, this is it. This is the life I was told I didn't deserve. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was mine. And I started seeing all the places where that truth had settled into me. Like the way I no longer apologized when I didn't answer calls. The way I stopped flinching when I saw haze on old mail. The way I could say no and not feel a crushing need to explain it. For years I had confused endurance with love. Believed that if I could just hold on longer, carry more, cry less, that someday they'd see me, that someday I'd be enough. But the truth was, I had always been enough. They just weren't capable of recognizing it, and that's not my fault. I've made peace with not getting the apology. I've made peace with the silence that follows when you stop being useful. I've made peace with the version of me I had to abandon just to survive in that house, because now I'm choosing something else. I'm choosing me. Not the daughter. Not the scapegoat. Not the emotional first responder. Just Tara. The woman who survived the crash, the neglect, the manipulation, and didn't just rebuild. She redesigned her entire foundation. And in that quiet Tuesday moment, with nothing but folded clothes and the scent of jasmine, I smiled. Not for anyone else. Not for a thank you. Just because I liked who I was when no one else was watching. So let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed too long in a place where love had to be earned? Where being the strong one meant being invisible? Where your pain was only valid if it didn't inconvenience someone else? If you've ever felt like that, like you were only appreciated when you were quiet, helpful, or hurting silently, drop a comment below. I promise you, you're not the only one. And if my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on your terms. To walk away from people who only value your obedience, not your existence. Because here's the truth I want you to carry. You don't need their permission to heal. You don't need their love to know you're worthy. And you sure as hell don't need to keep proving anything to people who only see you as a utility. Build your peace. Defend your boundaries. Reclaim your name. You get to be your own legacy. I did it. And if you're ready, so can you. Thanks for being here with me.